I think we got all of them.
I feel like we missed one.
You're probably right.
You probably missed some.
Yeah. Alright, welcome to part 2 of our discussion where we go over the series Lore Olympus in agonizing detail.
Episode by episode.
If you'll recall, at the end of last episode, we tallied about 19 plots that we had picked out from the first 70 episodes.
Yeah.
And so these are things that were introduced and not fully resolved. And so we put those on the mirror behind us. We added a couple more to them because there are actually more plots that were introduced in the past 30 episodes.
And some that we'd forgotten to count in the original 70 episodes. So I think we added Minty and Hades' relationship, and then we also added, Hermes and Persephone. Oh, no, that was in the original. I think we didn't add Megara's crush. That was not added.
Yeah.
Something like that. We just added a couple more.
Let us know. You can put a comment if we're forgetting anything.
Put a comment down below if you're a real fan of Lore Olympus.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you guys, I can't believe you forgot this glaringly obvious plot. You know?
Exactly.
Like, you forgot this one, you forgot that one.
Exactly.
Okay, so this picks up with episode 70.
Yes.
So you want to, without further ado, let's just get into it, right? We don't have to do any setup.
I think the only thing we need to discuss is that there were a few corrections.
Okay.
/ addendums.
Right.
So I think one of the things that we discussed was in the last video was in the episode where Cerberus comes to see Persephone. I don't remember which episode. I think it was episode 30 something when Apollo picks her up from class, and then Cerberus interrupts Persephone and Apollo when she's in his car.
Yeah.
Supposedly on her Patreon or one of her social medias, Rachel clarified that that was because Cerberus felt Persephone's pain and came to her rescue because Cerberus had already accepted her as the queen of the underworld. So I think we were wondering why Cerberus just showed up out of nowhere, and that apparently that was the reason why, but it wasn't in the text. And then the other correction is that in the first couple episodes, I think it's episode 3 or 4, when Persephone gets deposited in the back of Hades' car, and he somehow knows that Aphrodite did that, apparently in that episode, there's a post-it note on Persephone's leg that has a heart on it, and that's the reason why he knew. But again, there was I think that would have been a better explanation if we had had a panel of Hades noticing that post-it note, or just even a close-up of the post-it note, because I hadn't noticed it, and I've read this series a couple times.
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Sure.
About Cerberus.
Yeah.
Accepting Persephone as the queen of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
Is that after the initial meeting at Hades' house, where she tames him?
Presumably. And presumably the reason she was able to tame him is because he already had that affinity with her.
So
he already knows that she's going to be queen of the underworld, supposedly.
Apollo assaults her after that.
Yeah, so how come
Cerberus didn't bite his head off?
Yeah, if Cerberus came when Apollo was picking her up, then how come, where was Cerberus? Where was Cerberus? Where was Gondor?
Yeah.
Where was Gondor?
Yeah, what the heck is this? You know,
where was Cerberus in episode 24?
Right? If that's the justification for it.
Yeah,
you know?
that just opens up a plot hole more than it answers any questions.
Yeah.
That explanation opens up a plot hole.
Yeah.
So, I think whoever told me that, you might want to keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
That might have been better off, not being explained, because that raises more plot holes than it solves.
It makes Cerberus look like kind of an idiot.
It makes Cerberus look like he's willing to bail her out of minor grievances, but the major one's nah. You got this, Persephone.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up.
Okay, so without further ado, let's just dive into it, shall we? Episode by episode. This is going to cover episode 70 to episode 100, and yeah, let's just get into it instead of wasting time doing the overall thoughts. I think we can save that for the end.
Yeah. Okay. So episode 70 picks up with Eros in the car with Aphrodite.
Yep.
This is a flashback.
Yes, it's a flashback.
Yeah, and so it's where Aphrodite discovers that he's got
Psyche
in his apartment, and
Yep.
the discussion about how Psyche attempted to kill him with the knife that was given to her by her sisters.
Yep.
So it's giving us information that we already know.
Yes.
Because they revealed that in the initial conversation and flashback between Eros and Persephone and Artemis.
Yeah, so what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that this chapter is pointless? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. I guess so.
Because all that happens is Aphrodite saying the magic words, if I do this for you, then you have to do whatever I tell you to. So that kind of explains why Eros date raped Persephone, or put her in the position to be potentially taken advantage of in the first episode, or the first couple episodes.
But we already know that, because he said to them, guys, they said, why do you do everything your mom tells you to? And then he explained the whole backstory.
Well.
Yeah, the whole backstory over multiple episodes. So we already know everything.
Yeah, but this one has Aphrodite going to his apartment and seeing Psyche, and then I think it ends with her turning her into a nymph.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the part where you realize that the nymph who was always with Aphrodite is actually Psyche.
But we already knew that from the episode where Hades and Aphrodite bump into each other in public.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are you trying to say?
So I'm saying, why is this happening in this episode?
Yeah, Aphrodite just talks to Psyche. Psyche tells Aphrodite what happened to her and why she attempted to kill Eros. And then Aphrodite says, I want to know how much my son really loves you. I guess he really doesn't love her, because this never comes up ever again. He never finds out that she's actually a nymph.
Yeah, I don't know how that's supposed to be a proof of love either, but I guess that means I'm just an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think if he actually loved her, then he wouldn't fall in love with another woman.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I just don't know what she's trying to prove there. It's like, you know, the same logic of like, oh yeah, I'll get back at Hades by drugging Persephone, getting her really drunk. This similarly is like, I can't follow Aphrodite's logic here. I don't know what she's doing, so.
It's Greek god mythology logic, but
Yeah.
it's like very inconsistent when that logic, like the mythological logic, applies to the story and when it doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I guess that takes us to episode 71.
And basically we cut to a flashback where Persephone left Hades and Minthi because Minthi was rubbing their relationship in her face, and then she flew away, and then cut back to Hades and Minthi the same day. So this is like day 2 of Persephone's job in the underworld. I think it's like day 5. It's like Friday or something since they first met. And yeah, they're basically talking in the elevator. Hades accuses Minthi of being jealous and gaslights her because he goes, "Are you jealous?" And then before she could answer, he like kisses her to distract her. And then Hades says, "Oh, it wasn't a big deal. We just ran into trouble on the beach," which is like, yeah, you almost kissed her. You conveniently left that part out. And you were flirting with her the whole time. And saw her in her underthings. And played chess with her. And Minthi says, "Do you want her?" And then Hades says, "I want you." So he basically doesn't answer the question. And then cut to them in the aftermath. They're still in the elevator, so I guess Hades is confirmed one pump chump.
Oh my god.
I mean, how long of an elevator ride is that, though? Unless they were just making out, like. But then in the next scene, they're putting their clothes back on.
Oh yeah. I don't know. That's great. I didn't notice that the first time I read it. It was so dark.
No, I noticed that because it was like really sudden that they're in an elevator. And then she does like a fade to black with the ink splotches, and then you cut back and they're like, he's blushing, she's fixing her hair, and he's fixing his tie, which is like, why would that happen unless like something happened in the elevator, which is just like, how long is an elevator ride?
Could you imagine if other people were coming and going, and they're like, oh my god!
No, I don't even know. I mean, it must be pretty common because Hades seemingly tries to have affairs with the women that he works with all the time.
Oh man.
This is like his playbook.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyway, Minthi says, or Hades says, "Do you still want to come over for dinner later?" Which is like super funny because later on she says, "It was my idea."
Yeah, so
Hades says, "Do you want to come over for dinner later?" She says, "Yes, of course." And he says, 8 o'clock. And she says, "Okay." And then Minthi's at her desk leaving work. And she gets a text from Thetis, who invites her out for drinks. And she says, yeah, I'll go to drinks with Thetis because it's only 5. I'll be done by 8, just a quick drink. And then cut to Hades with roses, like, excited, making dinner for Minty. And basically he's saying, pushing her away is harder than I thought it would be. And then you get a panel of Persephone holding her hand up like a paw, and like the middle of the panel is her butt, which is very conveniently covered by just a sliver of fabric.
Yeah, she's got a shiny butt cheek. There's like a little star on her butt cheek, and then on her feet.
There's a star on her butt cheek because that's like the focus of the panel. It's literally the smack dab middle of the panel. That's the composition right there.
Yeah, and then he says, "Does she know she's torturing me?" Like I don't know.
She's basically like being blamed here for the fact that he's interested in her. And he's basically saying that she's intentionally tempting him to cheat on Minty. That's the implication, at any rate. And he already knows at this point that she's 19.
Yeah.
And he already knows that she's a member of the Goddesses of Eternal Maidenhood.
Yeah.
But that's the first thing that enters his mind, that she's intentionally doing this to him.
Yeah. And apparently nobody in his, 2,000 years of age has ever made baklava for him before.
Oh, yeah. He's been alive for 2,000 years. And he's had multiple relationships, presumably, but nobody's ever made any food for him before. Ever. So instead of throwing it away, he basically throws it in a drawer with a mug that has Persephone's lipstick on it, and the letter that he wrote to her, and then the letter that Hecate gave him that Persephone wrote. And then he sends Minty a text. And he calls her Tadpole, and he does this quite a few times. And it's kind of racially charged because it's only something that you would call a nymph. Which is just like...
Oh no, that's like,
Especially because Hades is like coded as like this rich white guy from the 1950s.
He's into race play? No!
Not only is he a one-pump chump, he's also into race play.
He's into race play.
He's just a degenerate any way you slice it.
And then he's talking about Persephone's feet, and then he's saying she's torturing me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a guy.
What a guy. And then I think Rachel discovered how you write sound effects at this point, because now she's finally just doing bark, bark, bark with no
sounds of barking.
No distant sounds of barking, no asterisks. It's just like the actual sound effect. Because Cerberus is like hanging outside his door while he's getting ready for his date.
I've got a quick question. So when they show Hades preparing the food, they show him chopping an onion.
Yeah.
And then he's got like a frying pan, and then he sprinkles something, then he takes something out of the oven. Do you think he just made that onion and nothing else? Could you imagine if it's just a sliced onion?
It's an onion that he fried, put salt on, and then put in the oven.
Yeah. Could you imagine if that's the dinner he prepared?
Here you go, Minty. Oh my gosh.
Just that onion, right?
Well, so then he texts her, hey, did you want me to pick you up later? And then she never answers. And
but
then
she sees the text.
She sees the text, yeah, it's red. And then he chops up the onion and then fries it and then puts it in the oven. Great dinner.
Mm.
And then at 8:15, she's already late. 8:40, he sends another text, hey, did I get the time wrong? 9:20, if you don't want to come anymore, it's fine, just let me know. Sitting alone at a table with wine. And then she sees the text, and then at 12 a.m., he's like 3 bottles in. And, he's just completely rejected, I guess. And then you get this weird image of, like, I guess the wine pouring from the roof onto all the objects, pouring out of the sink because he's an alcoholic. It's like a visual representation that he's an alcoholic. I guess I kind of like this imagery, actually. It's like the one good sequence that we get in these next 30 chapters. Like, and I would save it for the overview, but like just as a preview, the art for these next 30 chapters, I would say you already start to see it degrade. You don't really get anything like the Tower 4 sequence or the sequence in Tartarus. It's just, it's a lot more perfunctory and like efficient.
Yeah.
More so than it was like lovingly rendered when she first went to the underworld and all of that. You just don't get that as much. Then Hades says, I've spent entire lifetimes outrunning the deep feeling of loneliness. Tonight it is completely inescapable. And you see him transforming into his child self, and then I guess this panel of Kronos' face.
Yeah.
And then, of course, she doesn't want to be around you. You're just like me, so we're setting up Kronos. Hades wakes up.
He decides to eat the baklava.
Yeah, he decides to eat the baklava at the end and read her letter. People in the comments are saying they swooned when they saw the mug with the lipstick on it, which is just like, if I knew a coworker had stolen my mug with my lipstick on it, I would be so grossed out.
That's like...
I don't consider that attractive at all.
That's like you know, Carolyn.
It's friggin' creepy.
Joe Goldberg, I think his name is.
It's really creepy. If somebody had, like, stolen my stuff from my desk, like a used tissue, a mug, that's creepy.
Yeah.
That's not cute. That's creepy.
Especially if it's like a 40-year-old man.
Yeah, if my boss was secretly stealing stuff from my desk and keeping every email that I'd ever wrote to him or written to him, and like went to my desk and took my mug, because I do wear lipstick to work. If he'd taken my mug with my lipstick smudges on it, or like the tissue papers that I use to blot my lipstick, that would be really creepy. I don't know why that's romanticized in so much stuff, but like that's really creepy. That's really creepy. It's not like Meg's cute journal where she's like writing interactions. Like he's actually stealing stuff from her desk, or well, I don't even know where he got that mug. That's weird.
Yeah. Is it the mug that he gave her when she was in his kitchen?
I'm guessing, but why was she wearing lipstick when she'd woken up from the party? It's weird. And that was the first time he'd ever met her.
Yeah.
So that just comes off as like super desperate. It's not like years until like an unrequited crush.
No.
It's like, oh, the first night I met this woman, I'm keeping everything that she ever used in my house. I'm going through the trash to keep all the tissue papers that she used. It's weird.
Yeah.
I think he has the rose petals from his bed, too, in that drawer. Which is just like, what the heck?
Yeah, that's a little odd.
It's weird. Okay, so now we're on episode 72. And it begins with another flashback to episode 35. Because, you know, we keep going 20 episodes without going back to, like, original plots. That was another plot I forgot to write on the mirror. The fact that Persephone and Hades had met before.
Oh yeah, that's introduced in this chapter.
That's introduced in this chapter.
Yeah.
From a letter that Hecate gave him in like, episode 35.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's like Schrodinger's letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if it had been opened in episode 36...
It would have said something completely different.
Yeah, it depends on whether or not he reads it or not. That's what the meaning
there was nothing in the letter until he opened it.
Yeah, it's Schrodinger's letter because the contents of the letter are just confusing.
No, the contents of the letter make no sense because... Okay, let's just go over the episode first and then we'll talk about it because Hecate's response when he calls her at like 3 a.m. makes no sense.
No.
So anyway, flashback to when Hecate gave him the letter before they pulled that guy's eye out. And she said, romance aside, don't be afraid to get to know her. Even though, like, 2 episodes before that, she, like, beat him up for even being remotely interested in Persephone. But anyway, so then she gives him the letter. Hades eats the baklava and reads the letter. And he's mad that she's good at cooking. And then the letter says that it basically implies that Persephone had met Hades before the night of the party 1 week ago, and Hades doesn't remember, and it's because he's an alcoholic. And then he calls Hecate at like 4 a.m, and Hecate is really upset that he called her at 4 a.m, and she says basically, my life doesn't revolve around you, which is rich because she like makes up reasons to get Persephone and Hades alone together. Basically is like their number one cheerleading shipper besides Hera.
It would be great if she said my life doesn't revolve around you and then she hung up.
I know! My life doesn't revolve around you. Beep, you know? She even starts talking about plants and he just tells her to shut up mid-sentence because he only, like, this is only a one-way street. I get to ask you whatever I want and you have to drop everything to tell me what I want to know, but like, I don't give a crap about what you have to say.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting from
Very
this.
charming.
So he visited Hecate out of the blue when she was staying with Demeter and Persephone. And it turns out that Persephone snuck into the room and met him when he was like super drunk. And then Hecate basically says, you know, I don't know what you want to know. I didn't want to tell you because it would have been embarrassing for you. But it's like, first of all, why didn't she bring this up in the episode when Hades tells her that he's interested in Persephone. Like, why didn't you bring that up then, in that episode, when you were beating him up? Because she said, remember when we gave that bottle of alcohol to Demeter, that was when Persephone was born.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, remember when you came to see me that one time when you were sloshed out of your mind? You met Persephone that day, too.
Exactly.
So that's my first question. My second question is, why didn't she bring that up when she gave him the letter? She could have been like, hey, instead of saying like, hey, here's the letter that she wrote me because he wanted to see her penmanship, she could have just said, here's the letter that she wrote me. I think you'll find this one very interesting. But no, like that doesn't come up at that point either 30 chapters ago. It's only in 30 chapters later when he finally reads the letter that it turns out to have like plot changing information in it.
Yeah.
And then when he calls her and asks her about it, she's like, oh, well, you should have known, blah, blah, blah. Like, and this is again, like 30 chapters later, almost like over a half a year later, that like these plots are being introduced and changed in this way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how come none of this, Persephone didn't act like she knew him in the first episode. Persephone has never even indicated at any point when she's even thinking about Hades in the privacy of her own room that she knew him before. It's not like she's like, you know, maybe she already had a crush on him because she met him, you know, months ago. And then when she meets him in his house, she's like, wow, the king of the underworld. You know, I really have a crush on this guy from 6 months ago. Like, she treasures that moment together, and she already has a crush on him. And then when she goes home, she's like reflecting on it, and she's like, he's nothing like how he was 6 months ago, you know?
Yeah.
I guess because he was really drunk back then.
Yeah.
We never, like, we've been following Persephone this whole time. She's the point of view character, and we haven't gotten anything like that from her. We haven't gotten anything like that from Hecate, and then Hades doesn't remember. So it's like, this was 100% just written in before this chapter or during this chapter.
Yeah.
There wasn't even any build up to it.
No, I mean, it would have been really interesting, I think, from a sort of like an intrigue point of view to explain why Persephone and Hades are drawn to each other. If when she was around him in his house, he's like how we met before, and he has like a vague, you know, drunken memory.
Or an impression.
Yeah, like a hazy thing.
Maybe he remembers her smell. That would have been romantic.
Yeah, and he's like, why do I have so much affinity towards this woman? I don't think I've met her before, but something about her is so familiar to me. And maybe she saw that he fell and like hit his head, and she went in there and saw
helped him.
Yeah, and
yeah.
like,
you know what? That was in the Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
and that would have been a cute way to like have them have this strong feeling towards one another without having to spend too much time developing it.
Yeah.
Like, just have a really strong encounter between the two of them where, like, either Hades, like, hits his head and loses his memory, or he was really drunk, or he became really drunk, or something happened where he lost his memory, but Persephone remembers it and she's had a secret crush on him this whole time. Like, I just think you should give Persephone an embarrassing crush on Hades.
Yeah.
She's a teenager, and she acts less like a teenager than Hades does.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a deconstruction.
Yeah. Yeah, Persephone acts like a child, and Hades acts like a teenager.
Yeah, see.
But anyway, Hecate's like, if you're so interested to know what happened when you first met her, just ask the Fates next time you're at work. And then hangs up on him. And then Hades goes, if we've met before, what else is she hiding from me? And I'm just like, yeah, what else is she hiding from the audience? Because there's been, again, zero build-up to this from her point of view, zero build-up to, like, what happened on the mortal realm from her point of view. It's almost like Persephone has no thoughts at all. It's really weird. It's really, really weird.
Yeah, it's like, whenever we cut to Persephone's perspective, she's
very hollow.
Not only is it hollow, but she's just thinking about what's happening in the immediate present.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not happening right then and there as it's happening to her, in the same time frame, she's not thinking about it, which is strange. And that's why it's like, when you see this stuff, like, I mean, we'll get into that later on with the Aries and stuff like that, but it's crazy, because it's like, those things shape your personality. So your personality being all over the place like this is very strange if this is supposed to have occurred before the events of the story. But it was thought of while the story was being written, not before the story was being written. So it's very distracting.
So now we're on episode 73, and Thetis is basically jealous of Minthy because Minthy has a good relationship with Hades, and she has a really bad relationship with Zeus. She calls him at home, and he hangs up on her.
But he also answers the phone like Mr. Burns by saying ahoy hoy. What's up with that?
Because Zeus is a charming scumbag. I don't know. What do you want from me?
Ahoy hoy, really? Really, Zeus?
And then yeah, Minty gets like this really angry look or devious look in her eye, insults Minty. They have like a really, really good frenemy relationship that's really entertaining.
I guess, but just a quick remark here about the depiction of workplaces.
Oh
in
yeah,
Lore Olympus.
yeah.
Yeah. So she's wearing, I mean, they have their little banter, their friendship
Mhm.
banter. So Thetis says, "Look at your coat. It's so cute how you dress for comfort over style," which is
Mhm.
like a backhanded compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And then Minty says, "Aw, I like your outfit. It almost covers your ass." And it's like, I mean, nobody dresses like that to work, right? Like,
No. in like it'd be one thing again if this was like a small family business or something where people are getting away with this stuff all the time, or if she worked for Zeus where there's clear favoritism. But she works for, does she work for Hades? She works for Hades, right?
I don't know who she works for.
Yeah, who does she work for?
I think she works for Zeus, but I don't know what Zeus is doing.
Does she work for Zeus? I couldn't tell you.
I don't know what she does. I don't know what her job is. She's in the void answering the phone.
Yeah,
Sitting there.
Minty shows up at her workplace, and Zeus was in the office at one point.
Yeah.
So I guess she works for Zeus.
But what does she do?
I don't know. What does Zeus do? Why does he have an office?
I don't know.
Okay, if she works for Zeus, then I guess it makes sense why she dresses like that, because Zeus is a scumbag, and he likes probably women to dress really skanky around him. But, like, in a real office, this would be, like, you would get, like, made fun of all the time for dressing like this.
Not only that, but don't they have a human resources department?
I mean, some women get away with dressing, like, really inappropriately at work, and, like, I mean, you know, they'll just claim harassment or whatever if anyone points it out. But nobody takes it seriously. Or nobody takes you seriously as a woman in a male-dominated environment if you dress like that. But I guess Thetis doesn't want to be taken seriously. I would have more problem with this if she was dressing like that in the underworld. Because Hecate would be like, why are you dressed like that? But if she dresses like this and she's Zeus's private secretary, that'd be different, I guess. Because Zeus obviously doesn't mind.
It's just bizarre because I couldn't tell you what she does, what Zeus does, why is she dressed like that. I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know what the point is of having him have his personal assistant for whatever it is he does be a side piece, because the only time she comes into the story is to make Minty do bad things. And
The
it's
only time she comes into the story is to give Minty more sympathetic character arcs than Persephone gets.
yeah, but she could have been like a friend who works at like a clothing store, like a retail person.
Wait, isn't Thetis part of like the snarky chat group?
Yeah.
Why is she gossiping about people that she doesn't work with?
I don't know.
I thought they all worked with the Underworld!
I don't even know what Underworld Corp does.
How does she know Thanatos?
I
Like,
don't
it
know.
would make sense if she worked for the Underworld, but if she doesn't, then like...
I don't know. I have no idea what she does, why she does it, why she's dressed like that. It's all very nebulous, and it is a very superficial depiction of a workplace when the story is kind of half taking place at the workplace and
Yeah.
has workplace drama in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is really just a thin veneer for like why
It's like a soap opera
Yeah.
workplace.
Yeah.
Or like a Bollywood workplace, where
Yeah.
everyone wears like the super tight shirts and the super short skirts.
I was the hottest girl in the college.
Yeah.
Like
Bollywood police officers.
Doom 2 style.
Yeah.
The college.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So Minty and Thetis go out for drinks, and Thetis sabotages Minty because she knows she has a dinner date by telling the bartender to keep drinks coming. And then she like totally gaslights Minty about her relationship with Zeus. But here's the thing, Thetis has a point. When she says like Hades is spending too much time with Persephone, she totally gaslights Minty. She makes her feel insecure about having committed to Hades. She says Persephone is basically so much cuter than Minty, and she's higher class because of her ear shape, which is very, again, racialized.
Yeah.
And then she tells Minty to have her ears done.
Jeez Louise. But the thing that's confusing to me is that this entire exchange only takes about 10 minutes. But it's occurring while Hades was spending about 3 or 4 hours cooking that onion. So...
Yeah, from 5 to 8. That's how long this conversation went on.
It's not going very long, and they're at the same location. Only talking, like, there's only like a handful of sentences that pass. It's not like you cut to them at one point, they're saying, how are things going? Oh, you know, I don't know, did you ever seriously consider marrying Hades? oh, and then jumping around from topic to topic. It's like one topic or one conversation that's just going at the same rate a regular conversation would. There's no appearance of the passage of time at all. You even have Minty saying things like, oh, he offered me a ride and stuff like that. And she gets progressively drunker, but it doesn't take that long for a person to get drunk if they're sucking down drinks like that. I would say if you had 4 drinks in an hour, or 4 drinks...
She just had 3 drinks, like, shortly after arriving here, and, basically gets extremely drunk really fast, and then basically Thetis tells her not to text Hades back because she needs to punish him because he's getting too close to Persephone.
Yeah.
And Minty basically tells her exactly what's going on, and Thetis calls it. She says she's spending too much time with Persephone. The internship hadn't even started yet, so why is Persephone working there? Which is like, that was what we pointed out last episode, where it's like, how did the internship start so quickly?
Yeah.
And it's because Hera, not Hades, is actually shipping them together and wanted her to start as soon as possible. But she's right. Like, she's obviously in a situation engineered to get them close together.
Yeah.
And they're spending way too much time together. He's paying way too much attention to her. And he got Minty to just completely forgive him after one conversation by gaslighting her in the elevator and then, having sex with her to make her forget. And so Thetis is a jerk, but she has a point.
Yeah.
So she gets Minty to not answer his texts and just spend all night with her.
Yeah, the thing that's bizarre is that Minty sees the texts to add, like, insult to injury for Hades. But it's a timing thing where it's like, so she's just sitting there, drunk out of her mind for 3 hours. So, but yeah, that was just...
I'm guessing she drank so many drinks that she became incoherent, and then Thetis just took her home and put her on the couch or in the bed or whatever.
Yeah, but she saw the latest text message.
Yeah, the thing that doesn't match up is the timeline. It's like you said, when they're actually talking in the bar, she only sees the first text message at like 6:30.
Yeah.
And like, that makes sense if it took her time to get to the office and then pick Thetis up and then go to the bar. That makes sense. They would probably get there around, like, with traffic, like maybe 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then after 30 minutes, getting your table, ordering drinks, sitting down, talking. Yeah. That's when she sees the first text. And then she wakes up the next morning and looks through all the other texts. But in Hades' chapter, she sees, like, at least the first 2 or 3 texts.
Not only that, but I think she sees the last text, and that's when he gets really ticked off.
I think so, too.
And then he drinks a bunch of alcohol.
Well, let me go back and check.
Because she sees the last text, it says scene, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, really? And then he drinks a lot, because he gets so angry that she saw it, she left him on red.
Dude, at 9:20, if you don't want to come anymore, it's fine, just let me know. She sees the text message.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what the heck?
I don't know.
She, like, the implication in the Minty chapter is that she passes out.
Yeah.
Or becomes incoherent really quickly between 6:10 and 8 o'clock. So she's not even around, like, in her right state of mind to see the text message.
Yeah.
But then in Hades' chapter, the text message is seen, so unless Thetis went into her phone.
They don't.
But they never show that, and this is, like, episode, like, 74 or whatever.
Yeah.
Episode 100, they never show that.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so now we're on episode 74. Minty wakes up, sees all the text messages. Thetis says, good luck, I hope he's not mad. Minty calls Hades. And then this chapter is a real whopper, because then you cut to Persephone in the mortal realm, and just a side note, I think at this point, let me scroll down really quickly. I believe this chapter has 5 assistants, and I noticed that there was already by episode 74, there's a significant downgrade in the art. Did you notice that too?
Yeah. The backgrounds and the composition is definitely not
as good.
Well, not only just not as good, it's just, it looks like it was done by a different person. Somebody who doesn't look at composition the same way.
Doesn't understand the way that Rachel does her composition or approaches her composition.
Yeah.
And doesn't have as much of an appreciation for the nature. Like, this specific panel right here as an example, this looks nothing like how Rachel rendered nature in the previous episodes. Like, this is just a bunch of brushes.
Yeah.
And they're too realistic for Lore Olympus. Like, these hills are rendered too realistically, with too much perspective and shadow. Lore Olympus has never been about perspective. It was all like done like a decoupage, 2D paper doll style.
Yeah.
It was never done with perspective, with distance and shadow. That was never the style of Lore Olympus. But in episode 74, a lot of the shots are already becoming like that, where it's like there's stuff in the distance, there's perspective, all of that stuff.
And the colors keep changing, like
from panel to panel.
Yeah, from panel to panel, you've got like a jewel tone emerald in some panels with like denser, bushier foliage, and then you cut to what looks like wild grass, and then you cut to like this olive floating.
Yeah, the
stuff.
colors of the colors that Rachel typically uses for nature are more blue than
Like
green.
teal green, yeah.
Teal green, because it looks really good with the pink and the blue. But in this episode, it cuts from like yellow green, olive green, emerald green, back to blue green. It's like, you can tell there's 5 people working on this.
Yeah.
Each person did a different panel, and none of them made a study of Lore Olympus's art style.
Yeah.
So Persephone is basically walking around in nature and then gets a notification. And she's super excited because she thinks that Hades might finally have friended her on Facebook, but it was just Hermes, and she gets upset about that. And I wonder how Rachel's partner feels about that. Yeah. Insert the panel of Hades clutching his chest.
Sticker.
So then Persephone decides to call Hades because she's a homewrecker. So she calls him, and then he's stressed and pressed, but then he immediately answers.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
How does he drop the coffee? You just cut to the panel, because he's reaching for his phone in his pocket.
Yep.
There's nothing acrobatic going on there. And then he just drops the coffee.
Like I said, I don't know if Rachel was drawing these panels because this is the episode of 5 assistants, but yeah, there's like, she was never really good at conveying motion from panel to panel.
But why does he drop? What's the point of him dropping the coffee?
Just to show that he's like flustered. But he drops the coffee before he realizes it's Persephone. It would have been cuter if he was holding the coffee, and then he saw that it was Persephone, and he was like, and then he just accidentally lets go of the coffee cup because he's so nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an opportunity to make it cuter.
Yeah, or he like fumbles a bit, and then he picks the coffee, like he kind of juggles them, and then he answers the coffee, and he goes, hello, and he goes, oh crap, and then he goes, oh, hello.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
To make him look flustered.
Yeah, but the fact that he just, like, you cut away, you should have come.
Yeah,
did he get
the
shot?
coffee on the floor.
What happened? You know, did the dog attack him? I don't know. So,
I mean, or you could have done the thing where, like, Cerberus just knows that it's Persephone somehow, and then Cerberus gets really excited, then he's like, oh my god, Cerberus, and then the coffee drops, and he's like, great.
Yeah.
And then he answers, and he's like, oh, Persephone, you know. But either way, then Persephone is like, oh no, I'm nervous now, because I like him. What's a butt dial? They're both really awkward. Minty calls, and he hangs up on her because he's a jerk. Well, actually, that's kind of understandable. She stood him up with no explanation, so. And then Hades, you know, he's like, why are you calling? And then Persephone says, you messaged me at 4 a.m.
no, you didn't.
When did that happen? That did not happen in the episode where Hades got drunk, and we never come back to this message again.
And he says, I can't believe I didn't consider the time when I messaged her.
What did he message her?
You didn't message her.
Yeah, what?
What are you talking about?
The beginning of the chapter is her getting a notification that Hermes friended her.
Yeah.
And then we never got a message in the last chapter where he was getting stood up by Minty. So, and then they never explain what message he sent her. Why didn't they just open this chapter, or this episode, with Persephone waking up, or finally checking her phone, because she never checks her phone, you know, one of those people, and then she checks her phone, and then, like, maybe she gets a notification from Hermes that he wants to friend her, and then she's like, oh yeah, and I also got a message at 4 a.m. Oh, it was Hades, let me call him to see if he's okay. And that's, like, why? And that's another thing where it's like, I don't think there's a scripting or a planning process for these episodes, because it's like, this is the same chapter. The same chapter you had her get a notification in the morning. That notification could have been her noticing that she got a message at 4 a.m. and then saying, hey, I need to call Hades. Instead, we get a message about Hermes friending her on Facebook, and then her saying, oh, maybe I should call Hades for no reason. And then, when she's writing the conversation, she's like, oh God, what are they going to talk about? What are they going to talk about? Oh, you sent me a message at 4 a.m. But then she never went back to edit her script or edit her speech bubbles or edit her drawings to show her seeing that notification, seeing that message.
Yeah.
We don't know what he messaged her at 4 a.m.
So you said there's no thumbing or scripting process. I would argue that even the proofreading process is probably hit and miss.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how do you write that and not go like, wait a second,
Where's the message?
where's the message? And not only that,
None of the assistants, the 5 assistants working on this, none of them went, hey boss, where's the message?
what message?
Yeah.
And so he says she probably thinks I'm a huge loser, but keep in mind they've already had a 4 a.m. conversation over the phone at this point.
Yeah, they have. And he already confirmed that he has insomnia.
Yeah, so
they're having another conversation about his insomnia.
So-
which we already got in like episode 25 through 27.
not only that, but I think he's saying she probably thinks I'm a huge loser, and she's calling me to tell me that she doesn't want to come here anymore. I feel like that's directly related to the contents of this message.
But we don't know.
Well, we don't know, because I just went back and reread the chapter. There is no message.
There's no message. There's no message.
He puts his phone down, but there's like a sound effect that says snap.
Yeah.
So I thought he broke his phone in his hand. I don't know what's going on. It's very confusing.
We should have added that as a post note.
Yeah.
What meant the 4 a.m. message?
Where's the
message?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he says maybe Zeus paid her to be nice to me.
That's such a weird thought to have.
It's not a thought that a well-adjusted, like, normal 45-year-old... I don't care how lonely you are at 45, I don't know many 45-year-olds who are that insecure.
Not only that, but Zeus isn't that nice. We've seen time and time again, he doesn't give a crap. He's fine with Minty. He doesn't care about her.
Yeah.
One way or the other. He doesn't care about his brother, getting married.
We've never seen, like, even if Zeus was, like, paying, like, an escort to be nice to Hades so that Hades could have a good time, we've never even seen him do that. So what would make him think that Zeus would do that for him?
Exactly. Where is this coming from?
I'm really talented at insomnia. You have trouble sleeping. We've already covered this in episode 25 to 27. That was the exact same conversation.
And give the upside down building.
He said, I don't sleep much in episode 25 through 27. Yeah, the other reason, like, you can tell that 5 people are drawing this is because you start seeing bar charts in the nature scenes. Like, I don't know why there's logs here. What's up with that? I don't know what this is supposed to be. And then there's upside down buildings, which is really strange. I don't know where he's supposed to be either. And then you get the bar chart imagery in the mortal realm. But this doesn't look like it was drawn by Rachel because she never does this blur effect implying distance. And they're having like a really supposedly deep conversation despite the fact that this is like their 3rd time talking and the conversation doesn't have much of substance. He's just saying, I can't imagine what you would lose sleep over. And she's probably having flashbacks to her assault. but she's making a face like, deeply.
Oh, man. Again, there's nothing here that implies that it stayed with her, or she's like, again, she's only prioritizing what's going on in the immediate.
You could have had a brief moment where she has that, unwanted flashback.
Yeah, because
that would be what would keep you up at night.
Yeah, it's
because you came into her room at night and she would be reliving it. You would assume
the word for it is like an intrusive thought, right? She doesn't seem to have any intrusive thoughts, or she doesn't seem to be reminded of anything.
Dude, Persephone has like the memory of a hamster, man. She has like a minute-to-minute memory. There's nothing that really sticks in her brain. It's like putting your finger on a piece of well-risen dough, and then watching the fingerprint be completely lifted out of the dough. You had that brief interlude where she was guilty over what happened to her and having the scholarship. You have that brief interlude where she's jealous of Minty and she feels insecure because Hades is with Minty. Remember, she was crying about that. But none of that ever comes into play whenever she sees Hades again. Even in the elevator, she's saying, dumb village girl. How come she's not thinking about that here?
How come she's not thinking about Minty here?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Again, Hades has more interiority. Hades has more... There are more panels and more episodes dedicated to Hades' thought process and internal world than there are ever dedicated to Persephone's. Anyway, she has a 3-day weekend, which makes me wonder, like, what the heck time period this is. I'm guessing it's Friday, because he says you're not supposed to be working today.
Yeah.
So I guess she's off on Friday. She has no classes. And then you cut to her with Artemis, and you cut to her seeing Artemis asleep on the couch, and there's this huge dog here that came out of nowhere. This is the first time you see the dog. Where'd the dog come from?
Whose dog is it?
Where's this dog coming from? It has yellow eyes. Is it supposed to be, like, Artemis's familiar? I don't get it.
Yeah. I guess I'm not familiar enough with the Greek
No, the
mythology.
dog doesn't come back, I don't think. I mean, it comes back in that one episode later on, but I don't know who this dog is. I remember her having a cat, but I don't remember this dog coming back.
And Persephone's talking to the cat in the next episode.
And then Persephone decides at the end of this chapter to get out of the the goddesses of eternal maidenhood, but then she never follows up on that thought because later on, she just decides to wear the dress.
Yeah, she's still in there when Hades takes her back to her house.
Yeah. Okay, in the next episode, episode 75, starts off with Persephone talking to Artemis's cat, and she's trying to come up with a plan to get out of the goddesses of eternal maidenhood, and her only plan is to run away and join the Norse pantheon. But I feel like this is where it becomes really obvious that Persephone is, like, written like a 13-year-old. Like, if you are part of this scholarship, and you're 19, and you have some sense of, like, maturity and confidence, would your first thought be to run away? I mean, that's very, very, very childish. Like, I thought about running away when I was, like, 8, you know, before I realized that I couldn't run away, you know? I couldn't survive on my own. So then she says, I feel like a fraud for using my scholarship. I don't meet the criteria anymore. And again, it's like, this is what she's thinking about after what happened with her with Apollo. You know, it's almost like, oh, after that consensual encounter with Apollo, I feel guilty, you know?
Yeah, and when clearly it was not.
No, I mean, the fact that she's upset because she doesn't meet the criteria anymore is like...
And even then, the degree to which she is upset is very much like, oh, sugar snaps, to quote Persephone. If I come out with what happened, I'll lose my scholarship for sure, and I certainly won't be able to live here anymore, but I want to go to school. I love school, pouting like a child. No, like, I hate that bastard, I'm gonna kill him for what he did to me. He's threatening my ability to live a life and get education and independence. Like, how dare he? None of that.
Or, like, I can't believe he did that to me. I can't believe that if it came out, would people believe me? Or would they just say that I deserved it and take away my scholarship? You know, like, that would be my thought. If I tried to go after Apollo, you know, he's a somebody here, I'm a nobody. If I came out, what would happen? And then flashback to Hestia taking her coat away. And that was just with the paparazzi photo.
Yeah.
Would they, like, cast me out? Would they call me, like, you know, a slut or whatever? Would people hate me? Or would they believe me because I didn't want it, you know? Like, that's what I would be worried about, but what do I know? Not like, I feel so guilty for using the money. I can't say, what should I say? All I can think of is to run away. I feel so guilty I love school. That's her number one concern. I mean, need I go on? And then she opens up her Underworld handbook, and these panels, like, if it wasn't obvious before that there's, like, 5 assistants working on it now, it's very obvious because these 3 panels, she looks completely different in every panel, and she's even a completely different color.
Yeah, they're not sampling the same colors.
No.
The body language, the shine in the eyes, the way the hands are drawn, like, it's very, very different between the panels.
Extremely different. And then she opens up her handbook, and then she says, look, Retz and I get paid for my internship. And the way she's drawn, like, the body language, and then, like, the fact that it's, like, a handwritten Post-it note added in by Hades, and the fact that she just buys that, like, I know it's supposed to be a joke, but it's, like, it just makes her look even more naive, and, like...
And she's talking to a cat.
And she's talking to a cat, so it's, like, if you told me this was an 8-year-old... Look, boy, I get paid for my internship, even though they never asked me for my bank account details.
Yeah.
And they never took my social security card. He's gonna pay me in box tops and popsicles. That's what it comes off as.
Oh,
With
yeah.
like the body language and like the fact that she's talking to a cat. I mean, again, need I say more? You know, flashback to yesterday.
We saw all of yesterday.
But we saw everything that happened
It agonized
yesterday.
me. Yeah.
That was Thursday, you know, the day that he was showing her around the underworld.
Yeah, because he's got the baklava in his pocket.
Yeah, that was the day he was showing her around the underworld. Immediately after they stepped off that elevator. Immediately after they stepped off that elevator, he was showing her around. So when did this happen?
We saw the pomegranate egg.
We saw everything. We saw it covered 20 chapters. We saw everything. This is a lie. This is a retcon. Total retcon.
Yeah.
This is fake.
Yeah, so basically this flashback, though, that happened yesterday shows them talking about the payroll statement, and Hecate says interns aren't meant to receive income, and you know that. And then he says, but Persephone is a guest in my realm. What would everyone say if she works here and I sent her off with nothing?
Hades own slaves.
Yes. Yes.
Dramatic editing, flashback, music,
Yeah.
spin the panel in.
Yeah, exactly.
He owned slaves. He said that twice because he was bragging about it. He was bragging about how he made his money off unpaid labor.
Yeah, Mr. Macho over here, but apparently not paying Persephone. That is shameful. That's shameful.
And he gives the gem of a line. She's a beautiful lady who needs money to do beautiful lady things. Like what, Hades? Like buying makeup and buying dresses and shoes.
How tall is Hecate?
I mean, Hades is supposed to be 10 feet tall.
Is he really?
I mean, that's what she said because people were complaining about the height difference, I think. I think that's fake. I think he's only supposed to be like 6'4" because there's no way he's 10 feet tall.
That
Doesn't make any sense.
He would be like Slender Man if he was 10 feet tall.
No, because like when he's drawn next to other male characters, he's only a head taller.
Yeah.
It's only when he's drawn next to Persephone that he's like twice her size. And like Hecate's almost his size, same thing with Demeter.
Yeah.
And Minty. I think Hecate is just supposed to be like 6 feet tall, and Hades is supposed to be like 6'4" or something.
Yeah. Because their proportions are very different. Like her arm in that panel with them talking is a lot shorter than his arm.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. She, like, proportionally, she should be up to his, like, chin, but she's often drawn like she's almost his height.
Yeah.
So. And then we cut back to Persephone writing in her diary, stomach down on the bed with her, like, legs flopping in the air like a child.
Cat sitting on her butt.
Cat sitting on her butt. And she's, like, making her little journal with stickers.
She's got a cherry stick.
I'm surprised she doesn't have a lollipop sticking out of her mouth, man.
Or her tongue sticking out like this, like...
Yeah, I know. It's pretty weird. So she's making a budget. If I'm really careful with my saving, I could pay my scholarship back. I know it doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. I mean, this is so Disney. Why is she talking to the cat?
Hey, it's your favorite panel.
Oh, my favorite panel. The proofreading. Opportunities available, permanent/full-time. Interns who exceed expectations during their internship will have the option of permanent and full-time job opportunities. Permanent, full-time, 7 days a week, paid job opportunities.
40 hours a week.
40 hours a week.
2 weeks paid vacation. Boop.
Yeah, exactly. Permanent/full-time.
Where is she reading that?
It's in the handbook,
That's the graphic design.
I guess.
And then she goes, maybe if I work really, really hard, Hades might give me a job.
I don't think you have to work really hard. I think you just have to wear really short skirts.
But then she launches into, if I had a job, then I would have my own money. I could get my own place. And I could do whatever I wanted. Like, getting my ears pierced.
Yeah, but the thing about getting her ears pierced is that she doesn't even, like... It's not even, like, a cute panel where she's, like, wearing watermelon earrings or whatever, like something cute that you would do for yourself. It's literally a panel of her coming out of some rich guy's car, draped in furs, wearing chandelier earrings, where the focus is clearly on her being, like, a beautiful object for the rich guy with the blue arms. I'm assuming it's Hades. It's not, like it's really weird that even in Persephone's, like, fantasies, she's not allowed to have a fantasy about being self-sufficient because, you know, she has her own place, she could get her ears pierced. She's not allowed to have a fantasy where she's self-sufficient without being framed as, like, eventually becoming Hades' property.
Yeah, and then the next thing she says is even go on a date. So the two things, and I could do whatever I wanted. I could get my ears pierced, even go on a date. When I got my own money, or when I got my first job, I was not thinking about going on no dates. That's just me. But I was thinking, hey, you know, maybe I can eat food at a restaurant now a couple times a week. That'd be pretty cool. I want to try out that restaurant, this restaurant. You know, I want to go on a vacation, travel.
The first thing I did
right?
when I, and I grew up very sheltered too. And the first thing I did when I made my own money was buy my own clothes for once in my life, because I used to have to ask permission from my mother and get her approval on what I wanted to wear, and our fashion styles were not the same at all. She would have a lot to say about what I wore. So I have a lot in common, supposedly, with Persephone. So the first thing I did was buy clothes that I wanted to wear. I did get my ears pierced, and I got tattoos, and, you know, bought books and video games, and went on vacations. You know, I wasn't looking to get out of the house just so I could date.
I don't see what going on dates has to do with getting a job anyway.
Yeah, I don't either, because presumably the guy would pay for everything. I mean, that's part of the fantasy, right?
Yeah.
That's why Hades is a billionaire.
Yeah, I mean...
She never gets her own house.
Yeah.
That dream is just ripped away from her.
Yeah, so then she says maybe that's a touch ambitious, and then we cut back to Hades going, onto the letter.
And then he's doing the chicken dance.
The funky grandpa at the records place.
The Fates, who work in the Underworld Corporation. And they're just a bunch of 80s gals with VHS tapes. And I guess they're not allowed to be old. No. Like, there's, like, no old people in this comic. So the Fates just wear 80s clothes, even though they're supposed to be old, and they call them young blood. And they work with videotape archives. And then he basically says, I want to know when I met her. And then they say, we can't give you the memory unless we get signed consent from Persephone. And then they just get, and then he says, but I don't want to give you consent because, you know, I want to see the memory. Can't you make an exception for me? And then they end up making an exception for him anyway.
Yeah, because I think the logic is that he doesn't want to get Persephone's consent because he doesn't want her to know that he's, like, snooping around.
He doesn't want her to know that he knows, because then that would indicate that he was talking about her with Hecate and, like, snooping around on her.
I mean, clearly Persephone doesn't remember that memory either. So maybe
we've never seen that she ever remembers that memory.
So maybe it would be a good thing for them to remember it together, right?
Yeah.
Like, he could be like, yo, I just found out. We met each other before. And she'd be like, really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that I met you. I didn't know that I had a past with Ares. Yeah. I didn't know that there was this act of wrath thing that I also did. Like, I have the memory of a goldfish. Maybe I should, you know, go see the Fates and have all those things brushed up on.
I'll sign it right now, you know? And so then they say, like, well, Zeus, he's a voyeuristic creep. Hades hasn't done anything to, like, make us annoyed, so we'll give him a free pass. And then there's a really, like, dramatic kind of reveal at the end there, where they say, like, why are we breaking the rules for Hades? Mm-hmm. And then, I think the lady's name is Clotho. Mm-hmm. So Clotho says, sister, it's because he's curious about his future queen. Then they cut to a bunch of VCRs, like, CRT TVs, with the VCR kind of text on them, stacked on top of each other with a picture of Persephone. But what is this supposed to be? Is that like a future vision?
Yeah, it's a vision of the future, because the Fates control the past, present, future.
But what tape are they looking at?
Some tape that was preloaded conveniently into the TVs. But the question I have is, like, they basically say, you need Persephone's consent, and then they wave it off anyway, and the logic is, because she's going to be his future queen, he doesn't need consent. So it's like, so does he need consent for other things too, because she's going to be his future wife?
Gross.
I mean, it's like, how do you write this in there without thinking about it for more than, like, a second and going, like, wait a minute, okay, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah, it's like...
Like, you could have just said, okay, we'll give you the videotape. You didn't need to have Just cut the line about consent. Cut that line out.
Yeah.
Just cut it out. Like, again, you're, like, making more problems for yourself than you need to have.
Yeah.
Like, with the Cerberus thing, just cut that out. Don't talk about it. Because you're opening up a can of worms.
Why couldn't he see the memory?
Huh?
Why couldn't he see the memory? Like, why not just have him see it right then and
Exactly. He could.
Why not just have him see the memory? Why are you trying to delay the memory? Because it doesn't come back between now and episode 100.
No.
So-
It doesn't come back until, like, the very end of the season, dude. It's like everything else. It's like, it's brought up and then dropped for 25 chapters.
No, but I don't understand why he can't just, because the whole reason he needs the consent and that he has to come back later to get it is because she wants to delay showing the memory to the audience. But why not, like, you introduce the memory, just show the memory.
Because you can't introduce and then resolve a plot within the span of a month. Are you crazy? You have to introduce a plot and then cut to something unrelated and then have it end on a cliffhanger, and then have the second plot end on a cliffhanger, and then start a third plot, and then have that plot start on a cliffhanger, and then only cycle back to the first plot when you run out of ideas, and then continue from there. But that's going to be 25 weeks later.
Okay.
That's the only way you can write. That's how you write. That's how you write a story, didn't you know?
I'm so sorry. I can't write. Oh, this episode 76 now is the one after this, and this one starts off with a warning that says, "Warning, this chapter contains themes of domestic abuse, which may be upsetting for some readers."
Mm-hmm.
So, this chapter begins with Minthy coming into the office looking a right mess. She's wearing a little prairie doll
Baby
dress.
doll.
Yeah, baby doll dress borrowed from Thetis, and she is very upset and angry. She's looking for Hades. Again, you have these panels where it's like this one to this one, the colors are very different. The art is very different. It's like teal in the background.
Yep. The color, again, at this point she has 5 different assistants, and the colors look totally different from panel to panel. Yeah,
the thing about the Minthy Hades thing going wrong, we mentioned this when we were refreshing our memories, and well, I had read it for the first time, but we discussed this before filming this video. Why not have it go over a span of 2 weeks instead of literally the day they make things official, or like literally the day Persephone goes off and he goes, "Oh, are you jealous?" And then they think everything's gonna work, and then that day it's like, "Oh no, Minthy screwed it up again." You know, within like 2 hours she messed it up. Have it go over 2 weeks, where, like you said, things are good for like a week.
Things are great,
but then they settle back into old habits, right?
I mean, that's how bad relationships go, right? You have the conversation, and like the other person or both parties are on their best behavior for like 2 weeks, and then things just slide back into what they were like before if it's a toxic relationship. But no, everything happens in like one day. In one day, he reaffirms his relationship to Minthy, and then the next day she stands him up for dinner.
Yeah.
Like, they can't have even like 1 or 2 weeks where the relationship is going well.
Yeah.
And then Persephone has to like watch them from the outside and become like a creepy, obsessed nerd.
Yeah, what would have been better is if they had 2 weeks, and then at the end of that 2-week period when he's like, "Well, I should have known better," she ruined it again. That's when Persephone calls him, and then they have another chat.
I think they should have had a relationship that went well for 2 weeks, and then you could have had Persephone get bullied at work. Like, I really like that idea. Persephone's like obsessed with Hades. He's withdrawing from her, and she has a crush on him, and then she's like, "Oh, why is he so distant?" And then she's more and more jealous of Hades and Minthy's relationship as they get closer and closer. And then over the 2 weeks, he completely ignores her, and then she gets bullied by Thanatos, Thetis, and Minthy, because they brought that up. They're like, "We need to get rid of her." Yeah. But nothing ever happened with that plot line. It's been that was in like episode 40-something. Now we're in episode 80, and nothing, like, that was 40 chapters ago. That was almost a year ago. Nothing happened with that plot point.
Thanatos wasn't in the past
30 Thanatos hasn't been in the past 30 episodes.
No. What would have been interesting is if she gets really jealous of Hades and Minthy.
Yeah.
And then Thanatos and Minthy and Thetis kind of like set her up, and they make her think that she should get back at Hades by trying to get with Thanatos.
No, I think it would be really interesting if they were bullying her, and then the fact that Minthy was bullying Persephone makes Hades ironically ditch Minthy for Persephone.
Yeah.
Like Minthy is the downfall of her own relationship.
Yeah.
Where she just can't help it how jealous she is of Persephone. And then the fact that she's bullying her is what causes Hades to go from ignoring Persephone to then have the scene where he's giving her the tour to Tartarus to cheer her up.
Yeah.
And then they have a heart-to-heart, and then Minthy sees them talking, and she's like, "Why were you gone all day?" "Oh, I was talking to Persephone." And then she's like, "You're cheating on me." And then she stands him up at dinner, and then it's like, okay, they're both equally problematic, but Minty was the one who caused Hades to spend time with Persephone because she was bullying Persephone first.
Yeah.
Out of an, like, unhinged jealousy.
Yeah.
That wasn't sparked by Hades literally cheating on her. It was just sparked because Minty is a very insecure, jealous person.
Exactly. And then if you have the, you know, the triad of people trying to bully her, they could be like, the more time they spend with her, like Thanatos, he could be like, how embarrassing would it be if, you know, she's in love with Hades, but then, like, I start coming on to her and she likes the attention from me, but then he realizes how much she likes him, and then he's like, I can't do this to her. She's a sweet girl.
Yeah.
You know? And then he goes, I don't want to be part of this anymore.
Right.
I don't want to bully her anymore. And then he leaves the flock.
No, that would have been really good, because then
Yeah.
it would also give a reason for people to like Persephone.
Yeah. And then Minty and Thetis are there. And then Minty and Thetis, you know, they're talking, and Thetis is having a lot of trouble with Zeus, and Persephone sees that and goes, oh, I know what it's like to not have unrequited love. So I made some baklava. Here, you can have some to cheer you up. And Thetis is like, oh my god, I don't even know this girl, but she, like, is so nice to me.
And I'm a jerk to her.
Yeah, I'm a jerk to her, and I'm crying over Zeus, and she relates to that because she likes Hades. So then she and Persephone start hanging out behind Minty's back. And then Minty's like, what's going on here, guys? What happened to the plan? And Thanatos is like, I'm out. And Thetis is like, I'm out. You
And
know?
then Minty would be really upset, because Minty is the kind of person that people don't like instantly, and it's because she's so insecure. She's like prickly.
Yeah.
And then she'd be like, why do people like Persephone so much? And it would be because you actually show Persephone being nice, because in the comic all the time they're like, oh, Persephone's so good, Persephone's so nice. I never see Persephone be nice to anyone. Do you see her be nice to anyone?
Even the guy at the hospital when they put his eye back?
No, she's not nice. She's like, she's only nice when it suits her.
Yeah.
Like, the only time she was nice was when she gave out baked goods, and she only did that because she wanted to give it to Hades, but she didn't want to be seen as just giving baklava to Hades.
Yeah.
It was just a ploy. Like, she's manipulative. She's not nice.
Yeah.
But if you have that scenario where she's getting bullied, but she's still nice to her bullies, then you show that Persephone is a nice person. And even though she's getting picked on, which is, like, really sympathetic, office bullying happens all the time, and she can be like a dumb hick who doesn't understand the social conventions. Like, they could be like, oh, we're gonna go to that wine bar, and like talking about fancy cocktails, and she's like, oh, my favorite drink is I really like pomegranate zero, and they're like, what a dumb kid, you know, she's so unsophisticated.
Or she goes to a bar and she tries to order strawberry lemonade, and they're like,
soy
really?
milk.
Yes. Or she goes to a bar and she tries to order like soy milk or something, right?
What a dork.
Yeah. Or they take her to a fancy steak restaurant and she can't eat anything because she's a vegetarian, and she goes, oh, it's okay. Could I have like some onion rings or something? And then they make the onion rings really salty or something behind her back, or they tell the waiter, oh, my friend ordered onion rings, but she likes them really spicy.
She likes onion rings with bacon inside.
Yeah, bacon inside. And then she gets them, and she's like, oh, I'm sure it was just a mistake. That's okay. I'll just pick off the breading and eat it. And she goes, do you guys want these? Because I can't eat them, so here, you can have them. And then Thetis and Minty are like on diets, but they really want those deep fried onion rings, so then they eat them, and they go, oh, thanks, Persephone. That was really nice of you. And she goes, oh, it's okay. I'm glad somebody enjoyed them. You know, that would have been sweet, and I would have been like, man, poor Persephone, dude. That's so sad. But, of course.
No. That would have been more interesting, so no.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut back to Minty upset that she stood up Hades, but she says it's his fault for expecting so much of me. And it's like you were saying, again, when we were reading this. First she says dinner was my idea, but I have the freaking footage saved where Hades says dinner around 8 o'clock.
Well, he says, do you still want to come to dinner at 8 o'clock? So we don't know if he asked her or not. So there's enough ambiguity in there to be like, hey, do you want to get dinner at 8 o'clock? Oh, yeah, sure. And then later he goes, do you still want to get dinner at 8 o'clock? Or she goes, hey, how about dinner at 8 o'clock? And he goes, okay, yeah, I guess while they were, like, doing it in the elevator, that's when she said, like,
that was only 30 seconds.
Yeah, dinner at 8 o'clock.
And 30 seconds later, he's like...
it's because it only lasted 30 seconds that he goes, do you still want to do dinner at 8 o'clock? And she's like,
I don't know.
With that performance? I don't know. You know, that's why he was asking, like, oh, you know, do you still want to do that? So,
yeah, that's true.
Okay, so she's saying dinner's her idea here. And she says, I stood him up. I had every opportunity in the world to make this work. And these are her inner thoughts, while verbally she's saying it's his fault for expecting so much of me, right? And then she thinks it's confusing because she has a thought in red, but then she has another thought in a different text in red again. So she thinks, was he with her? But then she thinks again, face it, I messed up. But I don't know which of these thoughts are coming from where, or like why you would have that going on, because that's very confusing now.
It's because she was supposed to have borderline personality disorder.
Oh.
Yeah, supposedly originally Minty was written as having borderline personality disorder, but then Rachel dropped that idea when it became like controversial because it's like, why would you make the problematic violent abuser, you know, borderline personality disorder?
Yeah.
But I guess that's why it's two different thoughts, because it's like there's the surface thought, which is like gassing herself up and ignoring criticism, and then there's like the little voice in your head, which is like the self-critical voice.
I guess, you know, people could still have thoughts like that and not necessarily have BPD.
No, they don't, because like that happens to me all the time. Well, not all the time, but that could happen to you if you're in a situation where you're constantly second-guessing yourself. For example, if you're being gaslighted by an emotional abuser like Hades.
Yeah.
Like he's basically like he was cheating on her with Persephone. Emotionally,
Yeah.
he was about to kiss her.
Yeah.
And he was glimpsing her in her underthings. He had her in his house, and he gave her like a fur coat with diamonds on it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be second guessing yourself in this situation?
Yeah.
It's a very like, do I want to stay with this guy or do I not? She doesn't have to be neurodivergent to be thinking like this.
Yeah. It's not irrational.
It's not irrational,
Given
but
what she's been
at the
through.
same time, this whole build up to the slap, basically, from my perspective, like binging all these episodes, it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The build up and the execution is like the same episode.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't built up to. We don't get glimpses of this from Minty at any other point prior to this.
Why would she slap him? Because if I had just read this episode, I would think that he had done something a lot worse than this. Because it's just you missed dinner one time, and when he sees her again, he's not angry at her.
No, and she was the one who missed dinner.
Yeah, so why wouldn't she be, like, apologetic?
Because Rachel had to make Minty evil.
It just doesn't make any sense. Like,
She
I'm
had
not
to make her
following-
evil because she's way too sympathetic at this point.
Yeah.
I bet she read the webtoon comments and people were like, "Oh, I really feel bad for Minty." Thetis. It was probably after that episode of Thetis saying that he's having an affair that people were like, "Thetis has a point," and she's like, "Oh God, oh God, oh God."
So she had to do the old Cypher from the Matrix.
Yeah, where Cypher from the Matrix has a point. If you watch the Matrix, the first movie, Cypher is like one of the most rational characters. Because from the point of view of the characters in the Matrix, why would you choose the real world over the Matrix? But then in order to make Cypher look like an irredeemable douchebag, they just make him a rapist.
Yeah.
They're like, oh God, Cypher has a point. Okay, let's just make him a creepy rapist. And then like, that's the end of that character,
Irredeemable.
Irredeemable. You can't listen to anything he says because he's a rapist,
Yeah.
And then you cut to Hades saying, I don't want to be alone with her when she's like this, but he's holding on to the hand of his child self, showing Hades' inner child, like, upset at Minty coming towards him, or, like, scared around Minty. And how do you feel about that device?
I don't like it. And we talked about this as well. I don't think it should be controversial to say that statistically, men are more likely to commit acts of domestic abuse.
Well, not only that, I mean, I agree that women can be, like, abusive in relationships, like,
Yeah,
emotionally abusive, and clearly Minty is emotionally abusive to Hades, but it's not a one-way street. He's
No.
not purely the victim because he was definitely cheating on her emotionally. And then you had the scene in the elevator where he's basically gaslighting her. Women can be emotional abusers, but at the same time, it's not only that men are more likely to be domestically abusive, it's the fact that they're more likely to be physically violent.
Yeah.
And that violence is like one of the leading causes of death of women.
Yeah, and he is a tall, big guy, built like a fridge.
Well, not only in real life, even in the comic. It's
Yeah.
not like he's a child.
No, in the comic, he's a big guy, built like a fridge.
It's not like a Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation.
No.
Where the lawyer's like, is Miss Heard smaller than you? No.
Yeah, like he's got a huge size advantage over her. We saw him take a guy's eyeball out.
Mhm.
We don't know what he's capable of. And in order to make him look small and diminutive, and
For this one chapter only.
for this one chapter only, and scared, they pull the little kid card out, and it's a very kind of visually manipulative.
It's
sort
very
of thing.
manipulative.
Because they tie because when we saw Child Hades in that getup, he was hiding from his dad,
Mhm.
big bad scary Kronos, who wanted to eat him.
Yep.
Who was the size
Who did eat him.
Who did eat him? Who was the size of a Titan from
Mhm.
Attack on Titan.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to say with that visual. This is how I'm interpreting it. By putting this visual here and juxtaposing that visual with Minty, they're saying that Minty, tiny wayfish Minty, who is like a little thing, you know, is as scary as Big Bad Scary Kronos.
Well, not only that, it's directly comparing the abuse that he suffered at the hands of his dad to the abuse that he suffers at the hands of Minty. And it's like, she may be emotionally abusive, but like a slap from a 90-pound model when you're like 180-pound like brick house.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently he's 10 feet tall. He looks like he's 6'4", even if he's only 6'4". If he's like the size of Adam Driver.
Yeah.
And like freaking
Minty's like Gal Gadot.
no, she's not that tall.
Okay. So Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley.
Yeah. Yeah. Daisy Ridley.
Yeah. Like, that to me is just so
Manipulative?
It's manipulative and it's ridiculous.
It's character assassination.
Not only is it character assassination, but I don't feel scared for Hades at all.
Well, not only that, but even within the comic itself, like not even to go back to real life, to go in the comic itself, Hecate's bigger than Minty.
Yeah.
And Hecate slapped him multiple times when she found out that he had a crush on Persephone.
Yeah.
So why is that not abusive, but this is?
Yeah.
Like, even within the comic itself.
He gets, like, elbowed in the face by Ares later,
Yeah.
and he's got a black eye.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, but the point of it is, like, they're trying to show the kid Hades to make him, like, oh, poor Hades. I don't feel bad for him, because I don't feel scared for him, because it's Minty.
Mm-hmm.
And juxtaposing Kid Hades with Big Bad Kronos and Minty doesn't do it for me. It's not the same at all. It's like, what are you doing here? You know? What would be better is if he said, oh no, like, this is all screwed up. I'm gonna be alone again. I really thought I could work things out with Minty, but if it keeps going back to this sort of stuff, I don't know if we can.
If you had just made it so that Hades was not emotionally cheating on Minty and like ready to friggin' drop trow for Persephone in the first, when they're talking in the kitchen, he's ready to get it on with her.
Yeah.
When they're in Tartarus, he's internally moaning. Like, there's 10 panels between the first episode and the 70th episode. I counted. There's like 10 panels of him internally moaning around Persephone. If you didn't have all of that, and then you constantly showed whenever he was around Minty, his thoughts became all distorted, and he was like pulling out her chair, holding open her door, and she was still going like, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
You know, like, I knew like someone in real life who had that type of relationship with another person where, you know, she would like stomp on his foot if he didn't tip the bellboy enough. You know, if he didn't get her the right purse, you know, she would yell at him for hours. You know, that's emotionally abusive.
Yeah, lock him out of the house.
Yeah, lock him out of the house, stop him from seeing his own kids. That's emotionally abusive. We don't get anything like that from Minty and Hades, and we don't get anything where you see Hades basically rearranging his entire life around Minty. You know, every time she shows up, he's like hyper self-conscious, hyper self-aware, you know, trying to do everything perfect, because if he doesn't get every last thing perfect, she goes on a complete meltdown, you know, tirade.
And she's really mean to him, right?
Well, not only that, she's completely unpredictable. You know, sometimes she'll be like super happy and it'll be the best relationship ever, and then sometimes she'll just be a terror and ruin his life, you know, claw his skin and like slap him around.
Pour drinks on him.
Yeah, pour drinks on him, embarrass him in front of everyone, you know?
Yeah.
We don't get anything like that. We don't get enough into their relationship, and crucially, we don't get enough from Minty for me to say that Minty's abusive, because again, like, we get more panels of Minty feeling insecure than we do of Hades feeling insecure. I think we get more panels of Hades salivating over Persephone than we do of Hades being insecure in his relationship with Minty.
Yeah, because when she didn't show up during the party, instantly, like maybe 30 minutes had passed since he was outside of her house to when he got to the party, and he was already putting his glasses on and being like, Persephone, I have to talk to her. Yeah, with his pervert stare and looking at her body and that three thing. He wasn't thinking like, oh my god, guys, I don't want to be here. I should go talk to Minty. Like,
or he excuses himself to go to the balcony because he's depressed and he's like 3 wine glasses in.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine if he had seen Persephone and he's like, wait a second, what if Minty finds out? She'd be really mad, even though she's not talking to me. She'd be so mad. I don't know if I can, guys. And then his brothers are gassing him up, and then they force their interaction, right? Like, could you imagine if the brothers are the one who put Persephone in the back of his car? And he's like, oh my god, I really hope Minty doesn't find out about this. This is horrible.
Or you could even have it so that he's really depressed because Minty didn't come with him. He goes to the balcony because he doesn't want to be at the party. He's like 3 drinks in. Persephone's also feeling awkward. She doesn't want to be at the party. She was forced to be at the party. They meet each other on the balcony. He's 3 drinks in. He's thinking like, why does this girl seem so familiar? Because they've already met And then Persephone has a crush on him, so she's flirting with him, not realizing that he already has a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then Aphrodite, because Ares and Persephone also have a history, Aphrodite's like, oh, it's that jerk that my boyfriend was canoodling with in the mortal realm. Everyone keeps talking about how beautiful she is. I'm gonna teach her a lesson. And then instead of Eros getting her, like, drunk and putting her in a really bad position, I don't know, they could just be, like, playing Cupid in a non-creepy, horrible way.
Yeah. They could ruin her dress, and then Hades, being a gentleman, says, here, have my coat.
Yeah.
And then he gives her the coat. And she goes, oh, thank you, that's really nice of you.
They could have just had a nice interaction at the party. She didn't have to wake up at his house.
No.
You didn't have to force her into his house. I think that was way too much, way too soon.
It was, because then you get all those creepy things like, I would pay you a salary to barge into every aspect of my life. It's like, are you gonna take my kidney, bro?
Yeah, and he already has a relationship, but he's saying things like that to her. Like,
yeah.
That was way too much, way too soon. You could have
Yeah.
just had a cute interaction at the party. Persephone's like, why doesn't he remember me? Like, and then she could be super insecure, because she could be like, am I that forgettable? He probably just thinks I'm like every other flower nymph,
Yeah.
And then you could have had her feeling insecure, and then she sees his girlfriend, and then she's like, no wonder he didn't remember me. Like, she's gorgeous, and I'm a nobody,
Exactly.
But anyway, back to this. Then you get Minty saying that it's your fault that I didn't make the dinner, and Hades says it's Thetis' fault, and then she smacks him, and instead of like a dramatic panel, it's just like a one-panel, very basic composition. This is where you start to get the epidemic of like navel up, head-on shots in the panels, and the slap panel is the same way. Like, it could have been like a really dramatic, like, anime slap.
Yeah, like perspective. Well, not perspective, because she doesn't use perspective, but if it was like a large panel, and then it was like a diagonal motion, and he like fell to the ground because she slapped him so hard.
No, you could have had a panel where it is from the side, like two profiles, and you have the panel where he's getting slapped, and her hand is facing the camera, towards the camera, and then you have like 3 panels leading up to it, like one panel where her hand's coming in, one panel where they're like, profile to profile, she's slapping him, and the hand is facing the camera, and then the final panel is from the other side, or just focus on Hades' face. He looks shocked, and then the next panel is Minty looking furious.
Yeah, and she's got like tears in her eyes, and her hair is all crazy.
Like, that would have been a really dramatic lead up and slap. And it's so funny, because later on we get 5 panels of Persephone and Hades holding hands. Like, just the lead up to the handhold.
Yeah,
but here we get like one panel of the
Yeah.
slap. So then Minty says, I don't like you because you look like Cronut. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying Cronut because they spell Kronos with a K in the future episodes, but here it's spelled like Cronut, but with an S. And then she says, you have Kronos' eyes and his hands and his skin.
It's like, what are you talking about? No, he doesn't.
He doesn't look anything like Kronos. Kronos. He doesn't look anything like
Cronus.
Cronus. He doesn't look anything like Kronos, except for like sometimes.
Yeah.
And then Hecate stops Minty from having a total meltdown. So she's suspended until further notice. Hecate hugs Hades, and then you just smash cut to Hades in some area of the underworld, I guess. And he's talking to Nyx, and Nyx says the reason you're here is because you're having a traumatic break. Complete darkness is preferable to facing your feelings. But it's not complete darkness because there's like red light everywhere. And he just talks to Nyx, and it's a conversation that really doesn't go anywhere. You better get back. That little golden traitor is here to see you. And then she snaps him out of that realm wherever he went. But it's like, why? What was the point of including Nyx? Because Nyx was introduced in episode 77, and she doesn't come back in the next 23 chapters.
I guess just because it'd be a cool visual. But I guess if you see Nyx when you experience trauma, there are other characters who have also experienced trauma in the series.
I guess it's because he passed out, so then he saw Nyx, because she says complete blackness is preferable to facing, like, reality or something.
When did he pass out?
I don't know. They just cut from Hecate hugging him to him in the realm where Nyx is.
And then he wakes up on a sofa.
Yeah. She hugs him, and then he opens his eyes, and then he's talking to Nyx, and then she says that golden traitor is here, and then he wakes up on a sofa. Anyway, moving on, the golden traitor turns out to be Hera. Hades is like, what are you doing here? Hecate told me what happened. Everyone knows my confidence is at an all-time high. This is still Friday, by the way.
Yeah.
Hera pours a drink for him, even though he says, I don't want to drink. And then she says, a little baby serving for you, and then she fills her glass up to the brim. So they're both confirmed alcoholics, but, like, nothing... Oh, that should have been a plot point, too. Alcoholism.
Oh, no, it is a plot
It is a plot point. Okay, alcoholism is a plot point because it also doesn't come back.
It's right, it's, alcoholism, right up here.
Yeah. So the alcoholism is a plot point, but it's never... I mean, again, these 30 episodes is brought up, but it's not... Nothing happens with alcoholism. I believe Hera and Hades just talk, and the conversation's pretty repetitive and circuitous.
Well, she says, Zeus told me you almost proposed to that nymph. You didn't come to me first. I knew you wouldn't go for it. Besides, since when are you interested in helping me get hitched? So now it's talking about marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that no goddess in her right mind would want to be queen of the underworld. And so if Hera is supposed to bless the marriages in the mortal realm, her marriage is kind of her jurisdiction, I suppose. And so he says, if you're not going to help me, don't judge me for my choices. But then he has this insecurity about being like his dad, Cronus. And so then, I guess Cronus is like the universe equivalent of like a really bad dictator. Really bad tyrant. Like the worst one in history. We'll just say Cronus is like Voldemort, right?
Yeah.
So he's like Voldemort. And he's saying like, do you think I'm like my dad? Right? Do you think I look like my dad? But, and this is another thing, like, there were some panels of Eros in episode 70 where he looked just like Hades.
Yeah, everyone looks like Kronos.
Everyone
Hades,
looks like
because
Kronos.
everyone looks like Hades.
Yeah, and so then...
Every man in this comic looks the same.
Yeah, to cheer him up, she gives him a big old smooch, and the episode ends there.
And that was another plot introduced. Yet another plot introduced that Hera and Hades had a thing.
I had no idea, honestly. No idea. All this information is coming out when it's like, you would have thought that if they did have a thing, they would have been a little bit more, at the party when she goes, oh, where's Minthy? Nymph trash anyway. Not like me and you, wiggle wiggle, and he's like, Hera, please, come on, I'm not in the mood.
No, but they have a very old affair. Like, their affair ended, like, 20 years ago or something. We agreed to stop doing this in the 80s. And since it tracks real time, it's like 40 years ago. But then we cut back to the past anyway.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, if it is a 40-year-old relationship, then yeah, sure, don't bring it up at the party.
Yeah, why? No, but why do we need to bring it up at all?
Exactly.
It doesn't contribute anything to the story.
And that's what episode 78 is about.
Yeah, it just covers a flashback between Hera and Hades. You find out that Hera was placed in charge of healing Hades. And Hera, actually, it's been mentioned in this comic before that Persephone looks a lot like a young Hera. So that's interesting.
Who mentioned that?
When Hades gave her his fur coat, he said, you're about the same size as Hera. You're petite like Hera. Yeah. And then don't they mention that she looks like Hera? Or Hera looks a lot like Persephone in that flashback where Persephone's in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And she looks a lot like Persephone in this flashback, too. She looks exactly like Persephone with the round face and the giant eyes.
Yeah, 'cause she doesn't look like that in the present.
No, she doesn't look like that in the present. So then she heals Hades, and he was alone for 13 years. He's covered in injuries, can't talk. And then instead of healing him, she friggin' climbs on top of him, and then smooches him, which is just like, wow, I didn't know Hera was like that too. The sun doesn't fall far from the trees, all I'm saying.
You mean the apple?
Yeah, the apple, the Apollo, doesn't fall far from the tree. That's
what you were saying.
That's what
I thought he got it from Zeus, but clearly...
No, because she climbs on top of Hades when he can't even speak, and he's covered in blood.
Yeah.
She climbs, she just gets right on that pony, Like, she just climbs right on top of him, and then you cut to them smooching when he's all bandaged up. And then you cut to the modern day, and they're kissing, and then Hades is like, I thought we would stop doing this in the 80s. And then, Zeus and I have been fighting a lot, blah, blah, blah. Hades drives her back to her mansion, and then Hera invites him in, and this is Friday night. And then, Hebe comes back, and again, these panels are kind of like a waste of our time, because it doesn't really add anything to the story. I should have put Hebe on Post-it note, too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what does this have to do with anything? Nothing.
Hebe's...
You cut to a panel of Hebe touching Hades' face, like Persephone touched Hades' face, in like the 5th or 6th chapter.
She's like Persephone sized.
Yeah, she's the perfect size for Hades.
Oh.
And then Persephone just happens to show up at Zeus's mansion because you can't go a single episode, or you can't go too long without them interacting, even though they just had a phone call that morning.
Yeah, and she gives her own sugar snaps, and the chapter ends there.
Mm-hmm. She only started saying sugar snaps in like the last 10 episodes. She didn't say sugar snaps once in episode 1 to 70.
What is a sugar snap, man?
It's like a sugar snap pea.
She's like a Flanders character?
Yeah, she's like Flanders now. But then she also had an affair with Ares.
Googly moogly.
Yeah.
She wants to see his doodle.
Yeah.
And then Hera goes, Persephone, what a nice surprise. And Persephone's all self-conscious, and Hera's saying, well, what are you here for? And she's like, well, I brought you some rose clippings. So she's there to put some rose clippings in the garden.
Yeah.
And she stays for dinner.
But that was never established. Did Hera ask her to do gardening for her when she had the conversation with her in that previous chapter?
No. She just says, I have some rose clippings I thought you might like. She goes, what brings you by this evening? She goes, I got some rose clippings for you. Hey, lady, you want some rose clippings?
Of all the things she could be doing, she decides to go bring Hera some rose clippings.
At that exact
moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
not like Hera secretly texted her, hey, come over. I want you to work on my garden.
You know, it would have been better if she goes, Hebe, I have somebody here to see you. And she goes, in a minute, Mama, I'm really busy. And then Persephone and Hebe come out together, and they're both covered in dirt. And she's like, oh my god, what are you doing here? And she goes, well, I came over with some rose clippings. I thought you'd like them for your garden. So Hebe let me in, and that's what we've been doing together. We've been planting some roses. But I'm all done here. I'm about to leave. And she's all dirty and covered in dirt. And she goes, how about you stay for dinner? And then she sees Hades, and she's like, okay.
Well, at this point, Hera's already trying to matchmake them. So if you wanted to have Hera the matchmaker be like a legitimate plot,
yeah,
you could have had Hera be like, oh yeah, like, let me just text Persephone and get her over here really quickly.
Yeah.
Because if I can't sleep with Hades, maybe I can hook him up with some different booty tonight, you know? She's super into getting them hooked up together because she got her an internship at the Underworld Corporation 2 months before it even started.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have just had her bring her into the story if you wanted to force that interaction.
It would have tried to close the plot point about her being a matchmaker.
It wouldn't have closed it, it just would have continued it, because all Hera has done has put them in the internship together.
Yeah.
She hasn't really done anything else.
It would have helped it go somewhere.
Yeah, it would have helped it go somewhere, where it's like, okay, now Hera's meddling with their relationship and trying to get them to, like, if you had Hera and Hecate actually attempt to get them to have more interaction, it would force them into more interaction instead of this what's going on right now, where it's like they're overly familiar and they're like just running into each other constantly.
Yeah.
Which is not very believable.
No. She's a lot of other things she could be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then she goes, oh, you gotta stay for dinner. Hades, tell her she looks beautiful. And he goes, you look beautiful. And then she says, okay, you're staying too. And then he makes a fish face. And so then they forget that Persephone's a vegetarian. They're all eating dinner, but it looks like what they're eating is bread and grapes. So I don't understand what the problem is here.
Yeah, it looks like they're eating the same thing that... No, they're eating fish.
Yeah, but that's a big loaf of bread on the table with grapes.
Yeah, so how come they didn't give the bread to Persephone? Well, the other thing is they're Greek, and they eat Greek food because they eat baklava.
Yeah.
And Greek food's very vegetarian friendly.
Yeah. Hummus, dolmas.
Yeah. Pita bread.
Pita bread, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So many salads.
Yeah.
Caesar
They don't
salad.
eat, I don't think they even eat lettuce salad. That's not like a Greek food thing. But whatever. What do I know?
So then we get a couple panels dedicated to Zeus being like, oh, vegetarian, that's like a waste of time, isn't it? And then he gets kicked under the table. And then he just goes, well, you know, Hera, I think you should consider hiring another assistant. And then they launch into a fight. Because Hera told Hades in the previous chapter that she and Zeus have been fighting a lot lately. And so it's kind of awkward because they're fighting. But the content of the fight is really...
Forced.
Yeah, it's very forced. It doesn't really seem like something to fight about. And Persephone and Hades are kind of caught up in it, and they just kind of use the opportunity to like flirt with each other and then escape. And so she goes, how about I sort out those rose cuttings for you? And she goes, really, right now? And she goes, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But the weird thing is, Hera seemed to keep her for dinner under the guise of setting her up with Hades.
Mm-hmm.
But then when dinner actually starts, she completely forgets about that. And she's very oblivious to Persephone going outside.
It would have been better, because like the next panel you have Persephone like acting completely out of character and like running her finger along Hades' spine to get him to follow her, but it would have been better if Hera was like, you too, Hades, go after her.
Yeah.
Like, you could have just had Hera do it, and that would have been less out of character.
Yeah.
And it would have, again, been more in Hera's character, because she wants to set them up.
Yeah. And then even in the chapter, or not chapter, even the panel right after he gets the spine tickle, he looks awkward and embarrassed, and Hera and Hebe both look like, we know something you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you guys didn't know that Persephone did that. It wasn't part of the plan. There was no planning that, so what are you looking all smug for?
Zeus looks smug, too. He's, like, smirking.
Yeah, and then he says, be careful, grass stains are a nightmare to remove, implying there's going to be some, like, canoodling outside. So then Persephone's talking to herself, and she's like, why'd you tap him? What if he doesn't come? What if he does come? There's still time for me to escape over the fence. Why did I let my horniness give me false sense of confidence? Very out of character. Again, if I had read this dialogue without knowing who it came from, I would not have thought that it was Persephone. I would have thought it was Hades.
Yeah, because Persephone supposedly, like, up to this point, Persephone, like, is not attracted to Hades.
Sleeping your way to the top, that sounds really lazy.
No, but not only that, we get so many panels of, again, internally moaning, but, like, nothing from Persephone where she's like, wow, look at Hades' fridge shoulders, you know, and his tiny waist.
That nose.
Yeah, the nose. It makes me think of what else could be sharp and pointy about him.
Yeah. Oh, man. So he sits out there to send a couple of emails, and then they get to talking. He asks her, how come you're not using your powers to plant the roses?
No, first he stares at her butt.
Yeah, that too. He stares at her butt. And then he goes, why don't you just use your powers to plant the roses? And she goes, I like to do the things the way the mortals do. I guess you could say I want to understand them. Their lives are so short, nothing seems to come easily for them. I don't understand why they're having this conversation.
Oh, why did she get so close to him all of a sudden?
Yeah, she falls asleep on him.
It's because Rachel didn't want to write the end of the conversation, so she just was like, okay, let's have her fall asleep. Let's have her fall asleep.
Because it's nighttime all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's nighttime all of a sudden.
Dinner, and then it's nighttime, like, very, very quickly. She only planted, like, a couple roses. She goes, man, I'm exhausted from planting all those roses.
Can you give me a ride home? She says with the giant puppy eyes, even though she knows he's in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if I didn't... Well, we don't get glimpses into Persephone's head, so I have no idea what she's thinking at this point in time. I would just think that she's super manipulative.
How'd she get there?
Exactly. If she got there on her own, why does she need a ride home from Hades?
She can fly.
This just reminds me of, like, Peach Girl, where the main villain, like, pretends to be super innocent and naive and cutesy, and she's really small, just like Persephone. She's, like, really short and small and looks very childish, so all the guys think she's super cute, and then she's a total jerk in reality, but she manipulates everyone to get her way because she turns on the puppy eyes, and that's what Persephone's doing right here. She's, like, turning on the puppy eyes, can you give me a ride home? Tugging his shoulder very childishly, and it's just like, how did she get there? How come she can't go home herself? She can fly.
Yeah.
Why does she need to ride home in his car?
I don't understand.
It just seems like she's using it as a ploy to get close to him. And, like, but I don't know what she's thinking. I can't see in her head. She knows that he's in a relationship, so, like...
Yeah. And we're not the only ones who think that she's coming on to him, because in chapter 80, we've got binocular vision from Zeus and Hera, and then Zeus says, yup, it's just as I thought, she's totally coming on to him. And then they kind of look, like, satisfied with themselves. And then there's a weird panel where Hera's suddenly the size of her, like, infant daughter, or her 7-year-old daughter, and the daughter calls them perverts for some reason, and then they gasp. Not really sure why that interaction is there. But anyway, we cut back to them. And she says, I'm just tired, I wasn't expecting the evening to play out like this. And it's like, play out like what? You know, what are you talking about? You came there to plant some roses. You didn't expect to plant roses? I don't understand what you mean. Like, what do you mean you didn't I didn't expect to get tired planting roses when I came here to plant roses.
No, here's the question. If Persephone has a phone that we've seen her use to text and call people, why didn't she just text Hera? She could have been like, hey, Hera, I have a bunch of cuttings from my rose garden that I was cleaning up. Wait, where'd she get the rose cuttings from?
We don't see her gardening once in the series.
No, because she lives in Artemis's house.
Yeah.
So it's not like she went to the mortal realm to visit Demeter and then was gardening and then she was like, let me trim my rose bushes. Oh, maybe Hera would like these, you know?
No.
So where'd the roses come from?
I don't know. But
anyway, like, she didn't text or call Hera, she just shows up.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I didn't expect the evening to play out like this. Like, yeah, you just showed up at her house.
Yeah.
Who even knew she would even be there? I mean, she's the queen of the mortal realm, or not the mortal, Olympus, You would think she would have more important things to do than just sit around for you to come and like drop off some rose cuttings.
Yeah, so it's all very good timing. And then you got a panel of her yawning and holding his 2 fingers with her 6-fingered hand.
She has 6 fingers on her hand?
She has 6 fingers on her hand.
Oh, God.
So she's got a 6-fingered hand.
Oh, God!
She's holding 2 of his fingers with her 6-fingered hand. And then he makes a googly eye expression, and she's like a lot taller all of a sudden now. Like,
no, she was taller in the panel before that. She looks more like an adult.
Yeah.
Because a different assistant was drawing that panel. And then in the panel where she holds his hand, she looks very childish all of a sudden.
Yeah. And then she calls herself a stupid village girl because she gets self-conscious about holding his hand. And he goes, please don't be embarrassed. It's fine, really. And he goes, never apologize for being Sicilian.
That made me laugh. That made me laugh because it made me, like, imagine everyone with, like, Mario and Luigi accents. Being Italian is nothing to be ashamed of, you know?
Yeah, I guess there was a stigma for being, like, Sicilian in real life. I don't understand why this is here. There's nothing wrong with being raised in one of our motherland's greatest regions. Never apologize for being Sicilian. That's not really the basis of her worry about being a dumb village girl.
Well, not only that, but this is the first time, and I don't know if it's the last time, but it certainly never comes up again in these next 30 chapters. This is the first time that this is mentioned, that she's from Sicily.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the story, and it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't add anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you name drop Sicily? I think it's more... it's not the fact that she's from Sicily, it's the fact that she's from the country.
Yeah.
And the mortal realm.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have to name drop Sicily. You could just be like, there's nothing wrong from being from the mortal realm and living with humans.
Yeah.
Like, you live a rustic life. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, and that could have tied into her planting the roses by themselves. I mean, now we're having it in 2 separate chapters. I mean, she planted the roses by hand. She could be like, instead of saying, I want to do things the way the mortals did them, she could say, I'm used to doing them like this because I was raised in the mortal realm, and I didn't really use my powers a lot there.
No.
And then he says, well, you probably can't imagine it, but I was actually born there. And she gets all excited, and she goes, really? And it's like, him saying this has nothing, like, he can't empathize with the village girl thing at all. So she would be like, good for you. I don't care. You're a billionaire. Look at me.
Yeah, you're Jeff Bezos.
So what does it matter if you were born there too? That doesn't make me feel any better. You're just making it all about you now.
Well, not only that, but her excitement is so childish where she says, really? And then she goes, what did you call it? And then he says, home. And then she, like, gasps and puts her hands over her mouth. Like, it's very, like...
Why is she getting so excited?
She acts like a child.
What's so exciting about him being born in Sicily?
I mean, even if he was born in Sicily, it's like you said, like, at this point, that was 2,000 years ago. He's a billionaire. He's king of the underworld. The cultural gap is so big, and it was such a long time ago from her perspective. Literally 2,000 years ago, because she's only 19.
Yeah.
That would be like if, you know, Joe Biden told me that he was poor in, like, the 1940s. Like, that's not... I don't even know if he's that old. That's like Meghan Markle talking about, you know... The backlash that she faced dating Harry and like comparing that to, like, I don't know. She compared her treatment to, like, apartheid, or like her marrying Harry to apartheid being lifted in South Africa, where it's like, dude, no. No.
She has so much, like, privilege that
in comparison,
it's
a very hollow sentiment.
Not only that, but it seems extremely narcissistic that he's just talking about himself. Like, hey, you shouldn't be ashamed of that place. I was born there, and look at me, I'm great.
Exactly.
You know? And she's like,
that's what Apollo acts like.
Exactly.
By the way.
So it's like, well, good for you. I don't care. You don't get prejudiced. People don't talk about you like you're a stupid village girl like they do to me. So shut up, Hades. Shut up.
She should have just given Persephone, like, the thick hillbilly southern twang accent to really drive home the point and drive home the difference between Hades and Persephone, and it would have been like a New York and, like, deep south thing.
Yeah.
And then Hades would be like, oh, I was also from the south. And she's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, you wouldn't know it because I had to hide my roots to get ahead. You know, something like that. Where it's like, it's relatable because he's talking about, like, code switching or something, you know, where he's like, to get ahead in life, you have to, like, if he gave her, like, actual useful advice on how to get ahead despite being... Because she's basically disadvantaged.
Yeah.
From a cultural standpoint, again, it's like if you tried to move into, like, investment banking with a thick southern accent, no one would take you seriously.
No.
She's culturally disadvantaged, and he could give her some real advice instead of telling her, like, don't ever change because I think it's cute that you're so naive and you don't know anything and you're culturally so disadvantaged compared to me.
Yeah, she would actually look at him completely differently and be like, you changed everything about yourself if you were born in Sicily.
Why would you tell me to be proud of my roots when you've completely abandoned them?
Exactly. So, But no, she goes, I have to give you something. And she gives him a flower, but not before she says, settle down. We're not at work. You can't deny my gift.
No, she puts her dirty, worm poop covered finger on his mouth.
Digging around
in the dirt.
The compost manure.
No, yeah, she stuck her hand in the manure bag, fresh Greek oxen manure, and then she just shoved her finger in his mouth and made him taste it. And then she said, she can't deny my gift. And the gift was her finger.
Oh, God. So then she gives him a flower, and her hand is so small compared to his hands. So it's a camellia flower, and he goes, I haven't seen one of these in a long time. What do you think? You look sufficient. And then they speak ancient Greek to each other, I believe.
No, but why does she say just like me? Like, am I missing something?
The same as me.
Yeah.
I think it ties back to the Sicilian thing, but he's nothing like her, so what are you talking about?
He's nothing like her, and again, this is too much too soon.
Yeah.
This is, again, like, the third. So they had the conversation when she woke up in his house. They had the phone conversation. He went on the tour with her. This is the fourth time they're meeting, and it's like we were saying when we were reading this, like, if I was, like, hanging around a guy who had a girlfriend, and he was treating me in a super familiar, flirtatious way and trying to get close to me all the time, but he wasn't asking me out on a date, I would be ticked off. I'd be like, where do we stand? Are you just messing with me? Do you think flirting is just, like, fun to, like, treat women who are supposedly your friends like your girlfriend? Why are you being so close to me? Why are you acting so familiar with me? If you like me, ask me out on a date, you know? But he's not asked her out on a date. He hasn't broken up with Minty. For all she knows, they're still together. So she's, like, encouraging this over familiarity, gives him a flower, puts her finger on his lip, and then she says, just like me, and then she kisses him.
She kisses him on the cheek.
She kisses him on the cheek. Why?
While grabbing his peck.
And I don't know what she's thinking when she says, like, I don't know. I don't get anything from Persephone. We don't see inside her mind at all. We don't know what she's thinking when this happens.
No.
We don't, like, why is she kissing him on the cheek? Why is this happening? It's so random.
It is very random. And so I think the episode was based around these key visuals, though. Like, just like me, the same as me, the kiss, and then just like you, the same as you.
And then there's this really ugly panel where they both have black hole eyes.
Yeah, like button eyes from Coraline.
Yeah, it's creepy.
I think that's like when Zeus shines the light on them, and that's what the lens flare is supposed to be for.
Oh, really? I thought it was just like, I totally thought that was like fireworks between the two of them because they were
it's
so
like
happy.
the sprinklers come on because they're in the garden, and then there's a lens
Dude,
flare.
I did not, that's probably right, but I didn't get that at all. That's so confusing. The sprinklers are on. I didn't even know the sprinklers were on in this scene when I first read it.
Yeah, so the sprinklers come on.
There should have been like a sound effect or something.
Yeah.
Like she could have even written sprinklers come on.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know they were shocked here because their facial expressions look like they're staring at each other with doe eyes.
Yeah. They're staring at each other with something.
And then the sprinklers come on and then Zeus says, stop canoodling in my wife's garden and go home.
Yeah. So then they talk about the fighting between Hera and Zeus, and then talking about like relationships and being with somebody. Persephone's very optimistic and very
childish.
Yeah, she's like naive, and so Hades says, "Well, you know, being optimistic doesn't make you naive. You see things not for what they are, but what they could be."
Yeah, but she's not just optimistic; she's also naive.
Yeah.
So Zeus is, or not Zeus, Hades is totally gassing her up because. Like, I get the feeling that he likes how naive she is.
Yeah.
He thinks it's cute. He thinks it's adorable that she has no idea what's going on. You know, does she even know what she's doing to torment me? He likes that. He's friggin' Humbert, you know, at this point.
Yeah.
And he's saying being optimistic doesn't make you naive. No, it doesn't. But she is naive.
But I don't understand, because in that exchange when she goes, you know, what's going on with Zeus and Hera fighting a lot, I thought being with someone meant looking out for each other. And then he says... joking aside, being optimistic doesn't make you naive. What about that is optimism, though? It's not optimistic.
She said, maybe I'm being naive.
Yeah, because she's not being optimistic, but when she says, I thought being with someone meant looking out for each other.
That's not optimistic.
For him to classify that as optimism is kind of like, what the F, Hades? Like, you think that's optimism, bro?
That's
like,
not
no.
optimistic.
That's like the bar. That's like the bare minimum,
yeah, that's
man.
like a relationship.
Like, he shouldn't say, oh, no, you're being optimistic. You just see how things could be, that people could... be looking out for each other. No, that's the bare minimum. He should be telling her, you're right. That's the bare minimum.
Dude, it would have been a really good moment because Minty just slapped him and he's supposed to be still thinking. Again, like when something traumatic happens to these characters, they like think about it for like one panel and forget it.
Yeah.
But when she says that, you know, Zeus and Hera fighting all the time, I thought being with someone meant that you had to be together and be there for each other. He would like flash back to Minty slapping him and then look sad and be like, yeah, but that's not how every relationship is sometimes. Yeah. And then she could be like, and then you could have a really meaningful conversation here where she's like, I don't get it. Why would you be with somebody who isn't like that with you? I wouldn't be with a person who isn't like that with me.
Yeah.
And then Hades would be like, you know what? You have a point. That was a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and then later, when Zeus says, why don't you just make her your bride, he can flash back to that, I wouldn't want to be with somebody who would make me do that, or who would do that with me. And he goes, no, I would never do that to her.
Yeah.
Never, because it's not right.
That would have been a great moment between the two of them if he said, like, if you have this time to expand on their different views of relationships, and Persephone is the one who makes him realize that his relationship with Minty is toxic, and it's not good.
Yeah.
That would have been a great way to bring them together.
Yeah.
And then it would have been the irony of, like, Minty was the one who caused them to be together.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, contrivances.
And then at the very end, after he parks outside of the house, he gets ambushed by Apollo.
Yeah, Apollo knocks on the window of the car.
Yeah, Purple Man.
Yep.